It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by HP Instant Ink. No one is reading your mind, but HP Instant Ink knows when your printer is running low and sends new cartridges before you run out. So you never have to think about ink. For details, visit hp.com/instant ink Spotify. Conditions apply.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Bo Brock over there, Alex Clancy here. Follow him at Bob Brack. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by our boys Peacock and Williamson. NFL analyst Brian Peacock, former NFL scout Matt Williamson host Locked On Peacock and Williamson every Monday through Friday. So Brian and Matt give you the national perspective all around the NFL, covering all the latest news and insight on every game, team, and move all around the NFL. Get your picks, previews, and much more every weekday with the podcast, with the Peacock and William podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Now, iTunes isn't working still, okay? If you listen via Spotify, the Odyssey app, Google Play, Stitcher, whatever, and you have friends that use use Apple Podcasts more than anything, tell them that we are still doing daily podcasts. Bo and I are busting our asses here to put out the best content we possibly can for you. I mean, he doesn't, but I mean, I take this home with me. iTunes has been down ever since April 22nd for our podcast, so please just Google. You can find our podcast anywhere. Go to our at Locked On AZ Cards on Twitter. It has our link tree that'll show everywhere you can find Locked On Cardinals. We have a great show today, Bo. Zaven Collins was on Good Morning Football. He showed a little ditty about how he and the owner, Michael Bidwell, met, and an interesting little wrinkle into what a normal owner flying to grab player and fly back situation took place. We'll talk about that. Should Aaron Rodgers be traded for Kyler Murray? We're going to put that to bed. And what does this team look like moving forward? So the draft is over. By all accounts, this is what the team is going to look like going into the 2021 season. How high is the ceiling? Bo, first off, the odds came out for where Aaron Rodgers could potentially land for the 2021 season. Surprisingly, the Arizona Cardinals actually had odds. What were they?
Yeah, they were in the top 10 as far as favorites were concerned, according to betonline.ag, to land Aaron Rodgers. They were 20-1. Chargers, the team just ahead of them, 16-1, and the two teams that you would be like, oh, that's pretty puzzling because they have such young stud quarterbacks. Why would they be in the business of trading for Aaron Rodgers? This is the betting business. This isn't like, hey, where this is the most likely landing spots for Aaron Rodgers. This is where the wise guys in Vegas can maybe conjure up enough business to just take people's money. If like 20-1 to win, I mean, for every dollar you spend is a dollar that you've just blown on the chance that Aaron Rodgers is traded to the desert. Now, why would the Arizona Cardinals trade for Aaron Rodgers? Let me play devil's advocate because I'm team Kyler Murray until I die. Is that a little too much?
So like Zaven Collins on his acceptance call from Steve Keim after the draft. I'm gonna murder somebody.
But I will say this: I just think that look, let's not get into this. This is just the as far as absurd. It couldn't get more absurd than that. But would it be in the short term an upgrade? Look, you're getting a guy who just won the MVP, 48 touchdowns. Green Bay was number one in offense last year. Wherever Aaron Rodgers is this year, that's going to be one of the top offenses in the league. It's just, I don't care if you have Cliff Kingsbury. We'll see what happens with what kind of play caller Matt LaFleur is without Aaron Rodgers potentially. You know, could he look like Cliff Kingsbury's looked the last couple seasons and not as highly regarded? Yeah, I think that's an extreme possibility. But I don't know if I want. I know the Cardinals have never hoisted the Lombardi Trophy, but at the same token, like you can't trade the future. You can't trade a controllable, talented quarterback like Kyler Murray for Aaron Rodgers. But I get why they're in the arena, why they're in the discussion for Aaron Rodgers.
Right. I mean, because what they would get back is a team-friendly contract in Kyler Murray. Okay, done. Now, the interesting part about this, though, is the Cardinals play
Would Kyler Murray be involved? Like, because with the Packers, because they have Jordan Love, they just drafted him in the first round.
Yes, Kyler Murray would be involved.
Okay.
Yeah, because why would you?
Would they deal Jordan Love then to somebody else?
He'd just be a backup. You know, I mean, step one is get the pariah that is Aaron Rodgers out of Green Bay and get a damn owner for that organization. I don't know why Peter Bukowski goes on Twitter a lot. Locked on Packers dude, great follow, great writer, great podcast host. He has to continuously defend people for saying that the Packers should actually have an owner and not have the city own the team. It's cute. It was cute until about 96. Now it's time maybe for somebody to come in who actually spends the money, and he or she could have some control of that organization. I swear they would have won more Super Bowls at this point if they actually had an owner. This is not Locked on Packers. That's just my thought. But bringing it back to the Cardinals, they play both the Packers and the Texans this year. So this is a direct correlative between what the Cardinals' final win total will be. Because if the Texans don't have Deshaun Watson, which it looks like they won't, and if the Packers don't have Aaron Rodgers, which it's leaning towards the fact that they won't, that's good for the Cardinals. And the Cardinals, with the murderer's row that they have schedule-wise this year, that would be a fantastic little bonus to kick off the season. Obviously not making light of what's going on in Deshaun Watson's situation. Speaking in a purely football standpoint, if Aaron Rodgers is not the quarterback of the Packers, and Deshaun Watson is not the quarterback of the Texans, that's good for the Cardinals. Right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Even if Deshaun Watson is back in Houston, I mean, that team stinks. But would you rather face the Texans without Deshaun Watson? Absolutely.
Yeah.
If it's Davis Mills or Tyrod Taylor, sign me up.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to split this over the next two segments. We've taken a breath. The draft is over. The Cardinals have their players. Okay, Zaven Collins, Rondale Moore, the difference makers in the top two picks. Marco Wilson, and you move down the list. I'm not necessarily going to talk about the players right now that were drafted, aside from the top two, because they're expected to make impacts right away. Given the current roster, Bo, they didn't address the wide receiver position, aside from Rondale Moore in the offseason. AJ Green, we'll see what happens, okay? Running back, James Conner, low impact. As you mentioned to me off screen, there's a lot of eggs in the Chase Edmonds basket. And then cornerback is Malcolm Butler, Robert Alford, and a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
So looking at it moving forward to the 17-week season that we're going to see in 2021, what is the ceiling for this team?
I think this is a team that could easily win at least one playoff game as it stands right now. I really believe that. I think that they're talented enough. I think that they're a team that's going to be in contention for the NFC West, despite, as we just talked about the betting odds, they're still, according to most outlets, fourth as far as last in the division. To they're the long shot as far as the NFC West is concerned. But I don't truly understand that. You've got Kyler Murray as far as your top six favorite to win the MVP. If Kyler Murray is in that discussion, then the Cardinals are going to be in the discussion to win the division and compete, just be a contender. So it's kind of like it's a weird kind of situation there, but I think that this team should be in contention. That's what they've done all offseason. They've geared up, but the one position that you could look back with hindsight benefiting you is the corner position. Like you can say, okay, they didn't do enough. They didn't do enough but what I believe the franchise or the organization thinks is Malcolm Butler just slides in for Patrick Peterson. You get the status quo as far as production's concerned from the secondary, and then they're going to rely upon this front seven to just be ferocious. That's how they've really just kind of put this team together. They added J.J. Watt. They're getting Chandler Jones back. They've added Zaven Collins. They kept Marcus Golden in the fold. They kept Dennis Gardeck. They expect a big jump from Isaiah Simmons. And then the back end, they think Malcolm Butler, Budda Baker, and some of the pieces that they've had in place are going to be good enough, and maybe one of the two rookies pop.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be like tight end. We're not going to sit here and say, oh, they didn't address the tight end position that's why they fell short. It's going to the cornerback room is going to be key how this team performs, because you've mentioned it. The wide receiver quarterback duos and beyond, like it's a murderer's row this year.
Yeah. I mean, it is. And the one thing that was consistent last year, because the offensive line was ranked very high early on, first half of the season when Kyler Murray was running the ball a lot. So it made the offensive line's job a little bit easier, kind of regressed back to the mean towards the second half of the season. The one constant last year was the pass rush. That was the constant. Even though it took a couple weeks, even though it took for Chandler Jones to get hurt for it to really pop, which is weird, and I mean, it's, probably an exception to the rule. That was the constant. So the doubling down, I mean, I think that's saying it lightly. Now, if Zaven Collins, who my most favorite PFF stat that I've seen over the last couple of days is he didn't commit a penalty in college over his last 3 years. And that's something the Cardinals, I mean, having stability in that regard. I know the linebacker position, you're not at the line of scrimmage the most of the time, so you're not getting offsides penalties. Isaiah Simmons took 3 players' heads off last year, so those were his 3 big penalties, one including Cam Newton, which wasn't a penalty. Him not having a penalty in college over the last 3 years is a good thing.
The Simmons, most of his infractions, they were mostly
15ers. Yeah, 15ers.
They weren't PI, right?
No,
I think
taking somebody's head off was Cam Newton, and there was another, I can't remember who it was. Buda Baker had one too that had him hobbled. I think it was in the Dallas game. I can't remember. He had a big one last year also. I'm going to put a button in on this. We have to take a break. I'll give my thoughts about where the ceiling is, and then I'm going to ask Bo what the floor is. And that's kind of the jarring counterpoint to this. Like, the roster looks great. It looks good, but it could fall apart if these players that are over the age of 30 don't show us at least 70 or 80% of what they've shown us in the past. Alex Clancy, Bo Brock, Locked on Cardinals. We'll be right back. But first, it's time to talk about our friends at betonline.ag. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season's in full swing, and you can track all the action in BetOnline. This week has tons of sports action on the go. The NFL draft's over, but there's still NBA's heating up, NHL, MLB, as I mentioned. Before the next pitch, head over to BetOnline on your laptop or mobile device and check out all the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for their runs to the playoffs. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with promo code LOCKEDON. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with promo code LOCKEDON. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. This episode is also brought to you by 1010, a capsule collection of diamond rings that are responsibly sourced, limited edition designs at fair price points. 1010 is an exclusive collection of 10 creative styles of diamond rings designed by 10 of the most distinctive designers working today. Rings sure to bring joy into her life. Using only diamonds responsibly sourced from Botswana, 10 female design masters have each produced a unique, beautiful ring. Ideal for engagement, Mother's Day, or simply a beautiful conversation piece, they're the perfect way to bring light into her life. They're available now through Mother's Day only on BlueNile.com. Just search the words 10 by 10. This collection features high-quality, fine jewelry that will surprise and delight and fairly priced so you can give her something special and truly meaningful. If you're on the hunt for the perfect unique ring she'll treasure forever, you're definitely going to want to check this out. They won't be around for long, so find them now by searching the words 10 by 10 only at BlueNile.com. Second segment, Locked on Cardinals. Follow the podcast at Locked on AZ Cards. Again, iTunes is down. iTunes is, at least for us, for Bo and myself. So find it on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. Just Google Locked on Arizona Cardinals, and there's plenty of ways to find it. Because we want you to listen, and I think we put out good product the majority of the time. Bo said the ceiling for the Arizona Cardinals 2021 roster would be a playoff win. And I don't think that's too far-fetched. I would say if they go over 500, that's a win. And which would probably get them into the playoff situation with 7 games, with 7 teams in the playoffs. 9-8 would be a win. What's the floor? This is the scary conversation that can kind of temper people's expectations. J.J. Watt over the age of 30, A.J. Green 32, Malcolm Butler coming off a great season but still 31, and Chandler Jones coming off the biceps tear.
Yeah.
They play very important positions for this team.
Yeah, as far as how this thing's constructed, when you look at it, you look at some key positions. If they lose Kyler Murray and it's Colt McCoy playing quarterback, this is going to look like a 6-win team. And that's the case with most of the franchises in the NFL. You lose your QB1, and that's just a devastating blow that many can't, they can't compete with. But as far as the rest of the roster, when you look at maybe where some holes are, if the offensive line is pretty depleted, 3 injuries, if DJ Humphries goes back, reverts back to where he was before his 5th-year option season, and he can't stay on the field, even though he's been great the last 2 seasons, the left tackle, that's a key position. But I think that this offense is good enough to where they can get into shootouts and maybe win one of those games, a couple of those games. I think your floor right now, as the roster stands, if things, if most players are healthy and they just don't perform, without it being an even number schedule of games, it's now 17. I think 8 and 9.
That's the floor. So you don't think it'll go any lower than that? Right. Barring injuries, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's enough talent on this roster on both sides of the football that it would the frustrations would lie with inconsistency on the offensive side of the football and the defense not being taking a step back from where it was in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, it seems. I'm looking at the schedule now. Obviously, a week from tomorrow, we'll get the actual schedule for the NFL, which is going to be fantastic. That's going to be a hell of a podcast to do on Thursday. It's pretty even with the teams they play on the road and at home this year. I mean, they have Green Bay and Indy, Carolina, Minnesota at home, and obviously Seattle, San Francisco, and the Rams. They play Dallas, in Dallas, at Soldier Field, at Tennessee, and at Cleveland as that extra 17th game. Now, where it happens, if they're going to be playing in Cleveland in December, is a lot different than playing in Cleveland in September. If they play Dallas on Thanksgiving, sweet mother, give it to them. I'm going to start pounding the table. We're starting tomorrow. I will mention that at least 5 times a show. I want Kyler Murray in Dallas on Thanksgiving. Why the hell not? What's a better storyline? They want a cupcake. Dallas always wants a cupcake on Thanksgiving, and they can't win at home on Thanksgiving. It's time.
Kyler Murray's never lost in the state of Dallas or Texas, right? I don't think he's ever lost in the state of Texas in his life.
That's crazy. Yeah,
it is pretty wild. But yeah, the 2 ones to look out for when the schedule's released and when they're played. Like you mentioned Indy, and you mentioned a couple of the other cold weather places like Minneapolis. Those are domes. But like those 2 games, Cleveland and Green Bay, it's going to be pretty.
Green Bay, they're playing at home. Okay.
It's in State Farm, so it's fine. Sorry, I don't have the schedule up.
Yeah.
Or the opponents.
The cold weather, the only cold, no, it's Soldier Field. So it's Soldier Field and Cleveland are the 2 cold weather places that they're going to be playing. Okay. I mean, Tennessee could have flurries. I'm sure Nashville's all over the place with weather. But, I mean, it's at least balanced. But I think the floor is like 6 wins, man. Like, if this doesn't work, regardless of injury, and I think it will, but if it doesn't work, if A.J. Green truly has fully lost his step, which I don't think is the case, if J.J. Watt has lost 50% of his step and he's, taking plays off, whatever, and if Zaven Collins doesn't work out, if Isaiah Simmons doesn't take a step forward, it could just be a bunch of names on a roster. And that's been the fear from everybody on the offseason that's grading offseasons. Like, these guys are washed up. If they are, I don't see this team winning 8 games. I mean, if they had if the head coach acumen was a little bit higher, maybe to mask some of the shortcomings, I would say maybe that'd be worth another win or 2. But with things as they are, man, like I could definitely see them going 6-11 next year if things don't go to plan.
You would hope it would either be 6-11 or 11-6, because anywhere in between, like if they're 7-10, if they're 8-9, if they're just average, and we still don't know a lot about, like that's nightmare right there. Like you don't want them to go 8-9 and then Kingsbury comes back. Like you want to know, like, hey, he can handle this. He can be an NFL caliber head coach, which I know there's a lot of doubters out there, or he's just overmatched and it's like, okay, it's time to move on. please get, Brian Dable on line one. Let's get him in here. Brian Dable, the offensive coordinator for the Bills.
Yeah. I mean, it's an existential question we've asked ourselves a couple times. Do you waste another, if this was year 2 of Kyler, it'd be a completely different conversation. The fans of getting Cliff Kingsbury out of here would have a lot more ground to stand on if it was year 2 of Kyler. Because then you still have 2 more years with the 5th-year option. You have all of that time. You can't afford to waste another year of Kyler.
I just don't think, I'm not as scared of wasting a year of Kyler, because I think Kyler's here for the long haul. You'd have to do something to really seriously piss him off for him to not want to take one of the most lucrative contracts in NFL history, which he's probably going to get if he continues his progression. So I just don't think, I feel like you have the building block in place on the offense with Kyler Murray. We'll see what happens with Moore. I don't know what's going to happen with Rondale Moore. Is he going to be a guy that's going to be able to play at the NFL level? We'll see. Undersized, but he's got the athleticism. But on defense, you've got some young pieces that can move forwards. And then there's a ton of guys. If J.J. Watt doesn't work out, he only signed a 2-year deal. There's not a lot of money attached to a lot of the guys that they brought in. It's just the problem is they have this win now window with the group that they have in place. Kyler's going to be here for the future, but they just have to retool, and it would just be a lot more turnover, and you don't get that continuity. Our guy Caleb wants us to talk about the new tight end, the guy coming over from Austria. Do you want to hit it on the back?
You know what? Let's do that. We're going to have a little fun on the next segment. We're going to talk Austria. We're going to talk Michael Bidwell's flying abilities, and Zaven Collins as already placing himself in the ring of honor of interviews for Arizona Cardinals players. Alex Clancy, Bo Brock, Locked on Cardinals. We will be right back. But first, I get to talk about our friends at rockauto.com. I've talked about rockauto.com for a long time now. It's a website. You don't have to go to a chain storefront and search around like a crazy person for parts and paint and carpet, whatever. Have to ask people if you don't know where things are, get awkward and listen, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me? You don't have to do that. Go to rockauto.com. Their prices are reliably low. The prices are the same for manufacturers and do-it-yourselfers. You don't get an upcharge just because you're not a manufacturer, which is a huge bonus. You can get taillights and carpet and paint and whatever you need for your car at rockauto.com. Family-owned business, been online for 20 years. Go to rockauto.com, write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
What's up, everybody? David Harrison here of the Locked On Washington Football Team podcast. I actually just retired from the Army, and while that was a very exciting moment in my life, it also meant uprooting my family one last time. And not only that, but we moved in the midst of COVID, so finding the place that we really wanted to live wasn't as easy as it usually would have been. So we actually have moved a second time, and of course, every time we've had to wonder, is all of our stuff going to fit with our new house? Did you know that people who live in cities move 6 to 8 times before they even hit their early 30s? That's why you've got to check out Feather. Feather is a furniture rental company designed for people who want to feel at home no matter how often they move. Furnishing one bedroom can cost upwards of $6,000, but with Feather, you can furnish a bedroom with high-quality, beautifully designed furniture for the cost of your monthly utility bill. Their delivery team brings furniture directly to your home in as little as 7 days. They handle all the heavy lifting so you can go from an empty apartment to a fully furnished home without lifting a finger or assembling anything. And it's not just furniture. They have rugs, lamps, wall art, and more. What if you move to a new place with a different layout? No problem. You can easily get furniture that works for any space. Plus, by renting from Feather, you're choosing a sustainable alternative to fast furniture that won't end up in landfills. I remember vividly having to take time off of work or away from family events or social events that I wanted to attend just to wait for several furniture deliveries coming at different times throughout the week, but you don't have to go through that anymore. Try a new way to furnish your home right now. Feather has an exclusive offer just for Locked On listeners. If you go to livefeather.com right now and use the promo code Locked On, you'll receive $300 off your first month. Again, that's livefeather.com and use our promo code Locked On for $300 off your first month.
All right, final segment. We've talked enough serious stuff. Bo, why don't you set the stage for the Austrian football player that will be coming over to the Arizona Cardinals?
Now, the Arizona Cardinals sign Bernard Seikovits, another tight end that wasn't, obviously, he was from the international ranks. He comes over to the Arizona Cardinals and says, spill my coffee. That's fantastic. Pretty happy about that. But I watched, as soon as I saw the signing for the 23-year-old coming over from the international pool, I saw him in a 2019 combine. And he was just catching passes. He was going through all the drills that we see in Indianapolis, and he looked bad. He looked clunky. He didn't look smooth in anything he did. His route running, and I'm not this about you and I. We're not like talent evaluators. We don't look at this from a scout perspective. We're not Matt Williamson. We're just guys, just like most of our listeners. He looked like I was like, this guy's not going to compete for a roster spot at all. He was a quarterback, and then they're like, hey, well, you're not going to be able to compete at the quarterback position to try to play in the NFL. You need to play wide receiver. Played wide receiver. Said, okay, they're kind of interested. You need to play tight end because this is your size. This is what your athleticism shows. He's like, okay. So he bulked up, and then I saw this video. He's just, I don't know. The Arizona Cardinals continue to not invest in the tight end position. They just don't, they've, since moving to the desert, historically, it's just been probably, as far as tight ends go in the NFL, there's no team that has had this lack of success like the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, no, that's true. Todd Heap
came over at the end of his career,
from
right?
Baltimore. Yeah,
you had they invested Troy Nicholas, a second-round pick at a Notre Dame. I remember that.
Gresham.
Jermaine, they paid him a lot of money to, I don't know,
get a lot of pass interference calls, offensive pass interference calls. He was the king. I think he had 3 in 1 year of OPI. I mean, after getting paid, that was the worst contract.
Here's the thing about this season, and people realize that tight end is a need that they have for this year. But as I say, it's a position that they've never relied upon to make big plays in this offense. And they're behind the curve on this. They are, but it's not going to be a necessity for them to be good going forward. They were fine. They were good. They were okay. But when you look at the good teams, I mean, if you look at the last couple of Super Bowls, of course, you've had Travis Kelce in the last 2. You had George Kittle in the previous one before that. Gronk has been in several Super Bowls in the last decade. Zach Ertz has been involved, who I think could be somebody the Arizona Cardinals could target via trade. But in the last decade, tight end has been a key position for really good teams. And the Arizona Cardinals continue to kind of turn a blind eye to it. They have Max Williams on the roster. He's your blocking, Mack truck, rush lane opening tight end. Now they need to just find a guy that can block a little bit, but his primary role is going to be to get out there and make some plays in the pass game like Dan Arnold. Yeah.
Darrell Daniels obviously still on the roster as well. There are guys out there. Trey Burton is a hot name that gets talked about. He had flashes in Indy last year. We know that Phillip Rivers loves his tight ends. He flashed. I think he was with Philly first, right? He was the Dallas Goedert before Dallas Goedert had.
Then he went to Chicago, right?
Right. But he made his name in Philly first. Went to Chicago when they had 14 tight ends, and then went to Indy last year. He'd be a nice guy. Wouldn't be too expensive. I think he got a nice contract earlier in his career. But yeah, I mean, it's an afterthought. It's been an afterthought from the tight end position.
Listen to this. Trey Burton, 2018. This was after Philly won the Super Bowl. He was part of this Philly special. I think he was the one that threw the pass. He goes to Chicago, and Trey Burton has a career season of 54 catches for 569 yards and 6 touchdowns. All those numbers would be the best season in Arizona Cardinals tight end history.
There you go.
That would be the That would be the GOAT of tight end seasons for the Arizona Cardinals since moving to the desert. And I hope you're like me, where I don't count St. Louis. I don't count Chicago.
I don't.
It's AZ.
Correct. Same.
That's how 569 and 6 touchdowns. Both would be single season records for the Arizona Cardinals tight ends since moving to AZ.
Yeah, and that's terrible. Okay, so Zaven Collins, the initial call that now is all the rage with Steve Keim calling Zaven Collins was caught on tape saying that he was going to draft him before he drafted him. We saw it with a bunch of different players. It was all over social media in and throughout the draft. Zayvon Collins went on Good Morning Football this morning, and Kay Adams was interviewing him. That's a great show, by the way. Peter Schrager, the one who loves the Arizona Cardinals of the national media more than pretty much any other pundit, as part of the show as well. They were interviewing Zayvon Collins, and Kay Adams asked him what the process was like with Michael Bidwell going to pick him up in his private plane, and
she called it a PJ, which threw me off.
Yeah, private jet. That's a thing, apparently.
And then, yeah, I guess so.
That's the thing. We're not cool enough to say that. And Michael Bidwell flies his own damn planes. Yeah. So this was Zayvon Collins' account. This is about a minute long. This is funny. Like, Zayvon Collins is going to endear himself immediately to people if the Cardinals let him. This is what he had to say in response to that question of the experience of Michael Bidwell flying him home in his private jet.
Yeah, Mr. Bidwell came and picked me up. He was, laid back, and he would just get on, and we'll talk about whatever. And you can come up and kind of sit behind the cockpit in this little area where seatbelt in and buckle in. So it was nice, and got to let him talk to me about all the different instruments, talk about all the different stuff with the plane. He's an intelligent man and knows so much about everything. And yeah, that was probably one of the smoothest landings I've ever had, because he flew us right in, and it was like we were already on the ground. I didn't even feel the wheels bump. It was crazy. I was like, man, this is just absolutely awesome. So, the snacks, everything was absolutely top tier, and couldn't get any better. So it was awesome. I appreciate, him and the organization doing that for me. They took me by Hominy and let me see my old field, and, banked the plane for me to see. I got clearance to do that, and it was awesome.
Yeah. He's just a dude.
One set of wings? Like, hey, Zayvon, come on and see the cockpit. Have you ever seen an airplane cockpit before? Here, I'm going to give you these.
I haven't.
Come on, man. Were you not like 4 or 5? And
what, American Airlines with all the buttons and everything? I don't think listen, dude, I don't think I've ever seen the inside of a cockpit. I've seen it walking by. I'm like, that's a lot of buttons. I don't want to have anything to do with that. It's a lot of levers.
I just flew, and anytime I try not to look into the cockpit, because I just don't want to know what my pilot looks like. If it doesn't look like a dead ringer for Sully Sullenberger, I'm a little more anxious. If it's just some young dude that looks like me, I'm really that. There's no way that guy's gonna be able to maneuver whatever he needs to maneuver if things go awry.
Where are your life skills, son? Yeah,
I want him battle tested. I want him to have a couple wars under his belt that he's flown.
Would you be safe under Michael Bidwell? Would you feel safe? Would you feel safe with him flying? No. You wouldn't.
The guy with a silver spoon in his mouth that he grew up, no chance. He just took a couple flight lessons in Arizona. Absolutely not. I need him. Like I said, I need him battle tested. I actually watched Sully last night.
That's
so I was
a huge mistake.
I know.
Just a huge mistake.
I'd feel more comfortable if it was actually just Tom Hanks than Michael Bidwell.
On that note, Wilson, Alex Clancy, Bo Brock, Locked On Cardinals. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. Oh, so coming up the rest of the week, Ben Stevens from Locked On Big Ten is going to join us tomorrow to give us a deep dive into Rondale Moore in the last segment. And we're going to jump to Locked On Gators for Thursday for a little deep dive for Bo Brock, his favorite draft pick maybe ever by the Arizona Cardinals.
He's just mysterious to me.
Oh,
he's got all the tools, but I want to find out from our guy from Locked On Gators why Marco Wilson was a 4th rounder
and why he threw the shoe. Alex Clancy, Bo Brock, Locked On Cardinals. We'll talk to you tomorrow.